My name is Jessica Hayes Morgan, 33 years old, 3 months lost to a coma, and I opened my eyes to a hospital room stripped bare of anything that ever resembled family. The only message waiting on the burner phone beside me was a 2-word text from my billionaire father. Payment terminated. The machines that had kept me breathing had been running on the hospital's charity account, while the owners of Aeroglyph Dynamics toasted to finally being rid of the daughter who had quietly built their empire from the shadows. My stepmother, Kimberly, had already emptied my apartment and donated my clothes to some charity for optics. My half-brother, Ryan, had already moved into the corner office that was never meant to be his. My father, Michael Morgan, had already filed papers declaring me legally incompetent. They thought a patch of black ice and a tree had quietly solved their 15-year embarrassment. The unwanted daughter who knew every secret, worked every impossible hour, and carried the eyes of the brilliant woman they had spent a decade pretending never existed. What they didn't know was that my mother had left me far more than memories. She left me evidence leverage and a legal kill switch they never saw coming. The first thing that registered wasn't pain, it was the silence. Hospital rooms are never silent. There's always the rhythmic beep of monitors, the squeak of rubber soles, the distant murmur of life. This silence was deliberate. It had weight. My eyes fought to focus on the ceiling tiles. I knew that ceiling. 15 years ago, my mother had stared up at the exact same grid, while cancer finished what betrayal had started. Back then, the room overflowed with flowers and forced smiles. Now there was only a single folded sheet of paper on the bedside table. A nurse appeared in the doorway, startled, then tearful. "Miss Morgan, you're awake." My throat felt like sandpaper. "How long?" "3 months tomorrow," she hesitated. "Should we call anyone?" "My father, Michael Morgan," her face crumpled. "He's the one who left the note." I unfolded the paper with shaking fingers. My father's handwriting, sharp, impatient, the same strokes that signed 9-figure deals. Payment terminated. No signature, no pretense of love, just accounting. The nurse rested a gentle hand on my shoulder. "There are 2 men who have been here every single day, though. They refused to leave the waiting room." David Chin walked in first, my mother's estate attorney, the man who had aged 10 years in the last 3 months. Behind him stood a tall stranger in a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's cars. Christopher Vance, venture capitalist, shark, and apparently my new guardian angel. "Jessica," David exhaled, the relief cracking his usual composure. "Thank God." "What are you doing here?" My voice was barely a whisper. "Keeping a promise I made your mother 15 years ago," he answered. Christopher stepped forward. "The Global Tech Summit is in 72 hours. Your father intends to announce a full restructuring that writes you out of existence. He's telling the board you're permanently incapacitated." I laughed, dry, broken, furious. "He stopped paying for the machines keeping me alive, and that was his mistake." David's mouth curved into the coldest smile I'd ever seen. "Exactly. He triggered the one clause he was never meant to find." He opened his briefcase like a magician, revealing the final trick. "Your mother didn't just leave you money, Jessica. She left you a $950 million guillotine. And 2 weeks ago, your father pulled the rope himself. I had always been the family's ghost, present enough to be useful, invisible enough to be discarded. It started the day of my mother's funeral. I was 18, standing in my father's study while Kimberly measured for new drapes before the casket was even in the ground. She called me the Charity Project. A walking reminder of the woman my father had truly loved, the one whose mind had built Aeroglyph from nothing. While Ryan inherited corner offices at 24, I was given a repurposed janitor's closet next to the server room. While he stumbled through board presentations, I wrote the algorithms at 3 a.m. that closed billion-dollar contracts by 9 a.m. The Aeronav merger, my models, the federal drone swarm contract, my code written over Red Bull and grief while Ryan partied in Aspen. "You should be grateful," Kimberly liked to say over dry turkey every Thanksgiving. "Not many girls with your circumstances get these chances." My circumstances. Daughter of Jennifer Hayes, the data genius who turned a garage idea into a defense contractor juggernaut before she was 42. The woman whose strategies my father still quoted, whose daughter he couldn't look at without seeing the ghost of the wife he'd failed. But there were things about Jennifer Hayes they never discovered. Midnight meetings with David Chin, encrypted drives, quiet transfers of ownership executed while everyone mourned the visible empire. "Your mother knew what he was," David had warned me years ago. "She just made sure that when he finally showed it, you'd be armed." Now, in that lifeless hospital room, I finally understood the scale of her foresight. David laid the original incorporation papers on the blanket. Jennifer Hayes 60% Michael Morgan, 40% every public record listed Michael as sole founder. A lie made easy because my mother had wanted him to be the face. She never wanted the spotlight, only control. David produced another document, newer, lethal, the Hayes Revocable Trust. $950 million in liquid assets plus all controlling shares. Your mother amended it 6 months before she died. He tapped the single trigger clause. Irrevocable transfer of everything to Jessica Morgan upon proof of abandonment during medical incapacitation. The moment Michael signed the order to pull funding, the trust snapped shut like a bear trap. As of 14 days ago, I didn't just inherit money. I inherited the company. David slid a heavy plastic card across the blanket. My face, my name, clearance level none of them even knew existed. Executive override. A keycard my mother ordered fabricated 15 years ago. Access to every server, every vault, every room, including the boardroom. My phone buzzed at 6:00 p.m. sharp. Michael. Jessica. His voice was pure boardroom ice. I hear you're awake. Let's be reasonable. Sign the incompetency declaration. Ryan will absorb your projects. It's cleaner for everyone. I was in a coma for 90 days and the company moved on. Resources must be allocated efficiently. The company or your conscience? A pause. Sign the papers by Thursday or the board hears about your unfortunate mental decline. Like they heard about Mom's? Silence. Then softer, venomous. Your mother was sick. Her mind was perfect. Yours is apparently for sale. He hung up. David, who had recorded every word, simply smiled. The next morning, Kimberly swept in like a perfumed hurricane, lawyer in tow. Jessica, darling, she said my name the way people say lawsuit. You look functional. She dropped a folder on my legs. Severance, $75,000, more than generous. For 15 years of building your lifestyle, she examined a diamond the size of a grape. You've been living on charity since you were 18. That ends now. Ryan arrived an hour later, cologne first, grinning like he'd already won. 10 million, sis, cash, disappear. Go heal in Bali or whatever broken people do. And you become the genius. I already am. He flashed his phone, bank transfer ready. Final offer. I looked him dead in the eye. What was the name of the lead engineer on the federal drone contract? He blinked. Take the money, Jessica. Family looks out for family. You were never my family, I said quietly. You were just the placeholder. They discharged me to a fortified suite at the Four Seasons, paid for by Christopher Vance. My war room overlooking the city my mother had built and my father had stolen. For 48 hours we didn't sleep. First, the override keycard. Plugged into David's secure terminal, it bloomed open like a dark flower, my mother's private backdoor into every system. Every email, every deleted file, every hidden offshore account. We pulled terabytes of proof. My code rebranded with Ryan's name, strategy decks I wrote at 4 a.m. presented by him at 9. Emails between Michael and Kimberly referring to me as the asset that needed to be managed. Christopher worked the board members who had quietly wondered how Ryan suddenly became a genius overnight. He fed them just enough, side-by-side documents, timestamps, metadata. Then David found the kill shot, an SEC filing submitted the week after my accident. Michael had attached a private medical report, paid for, falsified, declaring me permanently incapacitated to justify transferring my unvested options to Ryan. Federal securities fraud. Prison time. Thursday morning. The summit ballroom thrummed with 2,000 egos in Brioni suits. I watched from a service corridor as my father worked the room, Kimberly on his arm like expensive jewelry, Ryan holding court with lies I used to write for him. At 10:29 a.m., 1 minute before Michael was due to take the stage and bury me forever, I stepped into the light. The collective gasp of 2,000 people is a physical force. Michael's smile died mid-handshake. I walked straight to the podium, heels silent on marble, and took the second microphone. Good morning, I said, voice steady, amplified to every corner. My name is Jessica Morgan, majority shareholder of Aeroglyph Dynamics and daughter of its actual founder, Jennifer Hayes. My father was about to deliver a presentation based on several felonies. Allow me to correct the record. I held up the override badge. Security froze. The screen behind me, meant for Michael's victory lap, flared to life with the original incorporation papers. 60% Jennifer Hayes. 40% Michael Morgan. I walked them through 15 years of theft, slide by damning slide. Falsified SEC filings, plagiarized code, recorded threats. Christopher Vance stood. 5 board members followed. The vote of no confidence took 4 minutes. Michael was removed as CEO. Kimberly lost her honorary titles. Ryan was reassigned to junior data analyst, desk by the bathrooms, no window. I took my mother's seat on the board, not out of vengeance, but because it was always mine. With the first trust disbursement, I founded the Jennifer Hayes Institute, full-ride scholarships for women in STEM who code at 3 a.m. because no one else will. I didn't dance on their graves. I simply gave credit where it was due, put my mother's name back on the building, and turned the ghost into the woman who finally came home.